Welcome to the deep dive. Imagine trying to take these, well, frankly, revolutionary personalized therapies that are just changing the game in medicine, and weave them into a huge national healthcare system like the NHS. That's the epic story we're digging into today. The UK's Advanced Therapy Treatment Centre Network, or ATTC network. So our mission here is to really unpack what this network is doing, its huge goals, and why it's so important for medicine's future, especially for you if you're keen to understand where healthcare is heading. We'll be using the ATTC overview slides, Sheffield.pdf, as our guide.
And it's definitely a story that needs telling. These advanced therapy medicinal products, ATMPs, they're not just, another pill. It's a totally different way of thinking, almost like living medicines, using cells, genes, tissues
Yeah.
to actually repair or replace function, not just manage symptoms.
Yeah.
So what we'll talk about really underlines the scale of the UK strategy here. They want to embed these therapies properly.
Okay, right. Let's unpack that, this grand challenge. What's the core problem the ATTC network is actually trying to fix? What's the big idea?
Well, the challenge is sort of layered. First, how do you keep the UK attractive for the really cutting-edge ATMP clinical trials?
Yeah.
Globally attractive. And maybe even more critically, how do you build the lasting infrastructure needed to deliver these complex treatments across the country? It's no small thing. We're looking at a 17.9 million strategic initiative.
17.9 million. Wow.
Yeah, serious backing. From the NIHR, Innovate UK is providing oversight, and the Cell and Gene Therapy Catapult is coordinating the whole network.
Okay, so this isn't just research happening in isolation in a lab somewhere. It's really about translating that science into actual patient care, but doing it efficiently, sustainably, bridging that gap from the breakthrough idea to the bedside, basically.
Precisely. And getting that transition right from the science to the practical care, that's where their main strategy really comes into play.
Right. Let's get into the nuts and bolts then. The clinical trials program for 2024 to 2028. This sounds like where the rubber hits the road. What are the main aims here? And I guess, how are they planning to actually do it, deliver these trials at scale across the whole UK?
Yeah, this program has four main goals. First, deliver advanced therapy trials nationally at scale. Second, seriously boost the NHS's ability to actually adopt these, transformative therapies widely, efficiently, quickly. Third, which follows naturally, is getting patients better access to ATMPs. And fourth, building a national infrastructure that lasts, that's sustainable. And to make that happen, they've built it around 7 key work streams or pillars. We can probably think about these in maybe 3 main buckets to make it clear.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. Buckets work.
Okay, so the first bucket is all about capacity building. This includes the UCO Advanced Therapy Network growth, so expanding the network across the UK. But not just adding dots on a map, it's about thoughtfully bringing in new NHS trusts, setting up an industry advisory group for best practice sharing, exploring what needs to change within the NHS itself, and talking to regulators early to find synergies. It's about getting the whole system ready.
Right, the whole ecosystem.
Exactly. And also in this bucket is training and education. I mean, think about it. You need to get thousands of healthcare professionals up to speed on a completely new type of medicine. So they're tackling this directly, developing a national training program. It's on the NHS England e-learning for healthcare portal, the LFH1. They're setting up a specialist network just for ATMPs and working with big players like DHSC and Genomics England. It's more than just online courses. It's a real push to get the workforce ready.
Okay, that makes sense. Capacity building first. What's the second bucket?
The second is about smoothing the pathways, making it easier to actually do this stuff. This covers ATMP clinical trials acceleration. Sounds simple, but think about the logistics. Getting these super personalized, often time-critical therapies to patients in different hospitals. It's complex, so they're pinpointing the barriers, embedding best practices from pilots that worked, setting up a pan-UK forum, a national clinical group to drive it forward. They're even creating specific toolkits and resources just for ATMPs. And importantly, looking at delivering these outside the big specialist hospitals eventually. Could they get closer to patients' homes?
So decentralizing a bit. Potentially.
Potentially, yeah. That's being explored. Then there's logistics. ATMP logistics aren't like shipping standard drugs. It's often a living product. Super temperature sensitive, maybe only viable for hours once it's prepared. I heard someone joke it's like trying to deliver a snowflake in summer.
Huh. Yeah, I can imagine.
So this work stream is looking at those unique challenges, finding solutions, boosting capabilities in the supply chain, and even piloting integrated systems to track and manage these really delicate journeys perfectly.
Okay, capacity, smoothing pathways. What's the third bucket?
The third is about ensuring access and understanding. This includes patient recruitment. So rolling out better ways to find and recruit the right patients. Sounds easy, maybe, but for rare diseases or super-specific therapies, finding eligible patients is a major task. Then there's data collection and use. Standardizing how data is gathered and used, finding secure ways to share it within the NHS and with industry partners. They're also looking at using patient-reported outcome measures, PROMs more, to really capture the patient's experience.
Right, getting the patient perspective directly into the data.
Exactly. And finally, and this is crucial, patient and public involvement, engagement, PPIE. This is about raising awareness of ATMPs, improving equity of access, making sure it's fair, that everyone who could benefit gets a chance. They're developing a patient charter, putting out reports on equity, on best practice for involving patients.
Wow, that really does cover, well, pretty much everything, doesn't it? From finding the patient through the incredibly tricky logistics, the data, the training. But with something this big and complex involving so many moving parts, what do you see as maybe the biggest risks? Even with all this planning, where could things potentially get bogged down or go off track?
That's a really good question. I think the biggest inherent risk is probably the sheer complexity of coordination. You've got so many different groups, NHS trusts, with their own ways of working, industry, regulators, patients. Keeping everyone aligned and moving together is a constant challenge. Things like getting consistent adoption of new procedures across all the different NHS settings, that's tough. Or, just maintaining funding and momentum over the long haul. These are always things to watch. It needs constant communication, constant adaptation.
Yeah, makes sense. So for a program this size, the oversight must be pretty solid. Who's actually steering the ship here, managing this whole national effort? And maybe could you give us an example of a key group actually doing the work on the ground?
Yeah, the governance is quite clear, designed to manage that complexity you mentioned. So you have working groups for each of those 7 work streams delivering the actual projects. They all report up to the network management team, the NMT. That team includes the ATTC directors, program managers, the CGT Catapult's chief clinical officer, and the director of ATTC network coordination. Their job is the day-to-day execution, making sure projects hit their milestones according to the plan.
Okay, the operational team.
Right. And then overseeing the whole thing is the governance board. This has senior people from NIHR, Innovate UK, and the Cell and Gene Therapy Catapult. Their role is more high level, reviewing if the program is sticking to its commitments, providing strategic direction.
Got it. And an example on the ground.
A great example is iMATCH. That's the Innovate Manchester Advanced Therapy Center Hub. It's a consortium based in Manchester, and they're specifically focused on setting up national forums for accelerating clinical trials. Basically, piloting solutions in their region that can then help speed things up across the whole UK, trying to sharpen that competitive edge for the UK and ATMP delivery.
Ah, okay. So it's not just top-down direction. These hubs like iMATCH are actively developing and testing solutions that can then be scaled up. Who's involved in a hub like iMATCH? Which organizations?
Exactly. It's that combination. iMATCH involves 6 key partners. The Christie NHS Foundation Trust is the lead. Then you have Manchester University NHS Foundation Trust, Northern Care Alliance NHS Foundation Trust, Sheffield Children's NHS Foundation Trust, Sheffield Teaching Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust, and the University of Manchester. And their specific tasks include things like setting up that pan-UK forum for trial acceleration we talked about.
Yeah.
And also really digging into whether ATMPs could appropriately be delivered outside of those major tertiary centers, pushing those boundaries.
All right, that seems like a really critical next step. So, okay, you've got the framework, you've got the hubs doing the work. How do you actually empower the people involved day to day? The healthcare staff, the patients themselves. What's the ATTC network doing specifically to, bridge that knowledge gap and make these therapies accessible in practice?
Yeah, great point. That enablement piece is huge. The TTC network has put a lot of effort into developing practical resources. They host them on their website, theatcnetwork.co.uk/resources. You'll find things like case studies, publications, videos, but also very hands-on tools and guides.
Okay.
One of the key ones is the NHS Readiness Toolkit. And this isn't just some generic document. It provides really specific resources tailored for different hospital departments and professionals involved in delivering these therapies. It's broken down into 8 sections, things like governance, business and financial planning, clinical practice, education resources. The real advantage is that it's designed so hospitals can adapt the materials to fit their local setup, their existing processes. It's not a rigid one-size-fits-all thing.
That adaptability sounds key for NHS adoption.
It really is. And then for patients and their families, there are dedicated PPIE resources. These give clear, accessible links to reliable information, what therapies are available, what the treatment journey might look like, where to find support. For example, there's a very helpful guide specifically for the CAR-T cell therapy journey, which can be quite daunting for patients.
That sounds really valuable. And the training piece.
Yes, the formal learning aspect I touched on earlier, the training and education program through the NHS England e-learning for healthcare portal. It's free to access, mainly aimed at healthcare professionals. It has specific modules like Introduction to Advanced Therapy Medicinal Products, a deep dive into CAR-T cell therapy, one on the tricky logistics of ATMPs in hospitals, and also modules covering that patient and public involvement and engagement piece.
It certainly sounds like they're building not just the science and the trials, but the whole support structure around it. From the highly specialized training right down to the patient guides, it feels very thorough.
Absolutely. And it's all being monitored, too. The network leadership has defined specific impact measures. Partners collect data every year to track progress against those pretty ambitious goals we discussed.
Well, this deep dive has definitely shown just how ambitious and how comprehensive the ATTC network really is. It's a meticulously planned effort to weave these advanced therapies right into the fabric of the UK healthcare system, covering everything from the research pipeline and complex logistics to actually upskilling the workforce and informing patients.
Which does lead to a pretty big question, doesn't it? As this network succeeds in embedding these, well, genuinely transformative therapies and the infrastructure they need, what could this actually mean for the future of healthcare for you? How might it reshape our whole understanding of patient care, of treatment possibilities, maybe even accessibility over the next 10 years or so? Could these highly specialized treatments become almost routine in the way things like organ transplants, once seemed revolutionary but are now more established? It could radically change what's possible.
Definitely a lot to think about there, how medicine is fundamentally shifting right now. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the Advanced Therapy Treatment Center Network. We hope it's given you a clearer picture of this incredibly important work and what it might mean for the future of health.